Today, I talk to Elena Kovaleva. She's a global certified compliance expert with more than 15 years of experience in compliance in large international companies such as GE, Microsoft, ERG, working in regional and headquarters, supporting boards, compliance committees, and establishing compliance programs from the start. And what is very interesting, she challenges corporate compliance standards and silos and believes that compliance should be as simple as possible and very logical. Elena is a national award-winning trainer on compliance and risk management topics and a certified fraud examiner. As always, when I talk to my guests, I'm interested in the person, of what is maybe not obvious and not written in the curriculum. I want to learn more about the human who impacts compliance and corporate integrity. Let us learn from Elena's experience when it comes to compliance and corporate integrity in her field of expertise and with global countries, in this case from the Middle East. I'm glad to have you here spending the next minutes together with us.
Corporate integrity, fraud, non-compliance, and cybersecurity. Would you like to understand the root causes, detect threats, and take measurements to protect the most precious assets? As a leader, you need to be prepared and stay actionable in the event of an incident. Sonja Stirnimann talks in her podcast, The Human Factor. Corporate integrity matters. To leaders and entrepreneurs who want to have impact, foster corporate integrity, and act as role models. As an international expert for corporate governance and integrity, entrepreneur, and independent board member, she knows the challenges. Let her inspire you.
So, Elena, it's so great to have you here in our podcast show today. Thank you very much for taking your time and talking to me and also to our listeners. And you're aware of the fact that I'm always interested in the human having the professional hat on, and especially you now with your compliance function you have. But I will also focus on you, your different roles you currently have, but also the ones you had in the past, because you are a very experienced person with more than 15 years. And your own personal experience when it comes to corporate integrity, but also compliance, and especially also being in Dubai and making things happen. So not only me, but also our listeners are so curious to learn from you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonja, for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to support you in any questions you have.
I think our listeners have a lot of questions. And, I also would like to start differently now with that podcast, because I know that you are a person challenging corporate compliance standards. And that's so nice. Would you like to talk a little bit about that to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics indeed. I do believe that compliance is a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. It's not a silos or bureaucracy function which makes stop the business. And the key question is a risk analysis. Are we ready to take the risk? And this is what compliance is supposed to do. They're supposed to establish rules which would not harm the business, but will allow for business to work in the legal way. And just let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. I think it's all about the stories. In one of my roles, when I joined the company, there was a clear prohibition for the big region, which had 40 plus countries, that there is no gift or entertainment for government officials, which was contradicting with the local legislation, or even like UK FCPA. Yeah, you are allowed to give a legitimate, to give a cup of coffee, mm-hmm. if that's a pure business discussion. Like, again, if there is no illegitimate business thought behind, there is nothing wrong with that. And our team at that time was completely not allowed to do any of those. So there was a complete, or they was doing that from their own pocket money, which is also wrong. So because they are violating corporate policy. So corporate world was against regional business world. And what we did at that point of time, we revised the local legislation, we reviewed all the 40 countries and detected, yes, there is few countries where indeed few restrictions exist, but that doesn't mean that there is certain restrictions. For example, restrictions for UAE, for Dubai, there is no restriction for government officials. You are allowed, for valid business reason, to invite representatives of government organizations for a cup of coffee, for business dinner, again, with a valid business purpose. The key thing is that you need to understand and explain what is allowed, what is a lavish thing. You're not recommended to go to Michelin star hotels, restaurants, and maybe not to go with a super expensive meal, because Dubai can allow a lot of different types of entertainment and dining options. But if that's a reasonable meal and you're discussing purely business topics, why we should restrict the business? It's a normal corporate practice.
And I think that's exactly the challenge you have. That's what we already discussed in our pre-discussion. For example, if you would like also to fulfill maybe the Western standards, but being active and doing most of the business in the Middle East, it can be a huge challenge also from a strategic perspective. What are we doing and what kind of risks are we willing to take?
Indeed. There is certain risks, in general, risks in Western world versus Middle East are rather different. I previously worked in Europe and Luxembourg, and I see that European style of business is quite different than we face here in Middle East. But I think it just requires proper framework and education. For example, what is allowed in regards of the travel? Because here everyone gets used to travel. First of all, the destinations are much far away, 5 and more hours. Sometimes executives are asking for business class. You need to review what situation and what particular requirements are allowed if we want to invite third party to travel, if there is a valid business reason. Then there is also a specific cultural aspect, such as gifts and iftars, dinners for Ramadan period, which also needs to be customary. And again, there should be certain regulations, which from the first look might look strange for Europeans or American businessmen, but it is would be disrespect if you decline iftar invitation. In the local culture. So again, obviously, there should be certain cultural element, as anywhere, like in China, in Turkey, like in Russia, you have all the different specifics, and you need to consider them and incorporate in your local compliance program.
You mentioned that you used to work in Luxembourg before, which is very European. So how did you manage the compliance cultural shift you made when you moved to Dubai and doing, fulfilling your functions over there now?
Cultural shift was not that difficult because working in Luxembourg, I was covering international businesses. That was HQ. So that was a good preparation point for me for further shift to Middle East and Africa. But indeed, there is definitely specificity, especially in communication, this cross-cultural elements, which we definitely need to consider. For example, my favorite is level of emotions. And number of HR cases. Usually in Middle East, number of HR cases is significantly higher than in Luxembourg. Yes, because that's normally because of specificity. Local people are more emotional in general, similar to Italians or Spanish people, who are very positive and they want to share their emotions. So sometimes they do complain, and you need to understand if that's just one moment and they just want to share and open their soul and just tell you everything that they think, or it's a really, you need to find, and there is a
real issue.
There is a bullying, there is a sexual harassment, so you need to ask questions because they just need few minutes to calm down. So what I've learned is just you need to cool them down a little bit, and in 15 minutes, the proper conversation starts.
So does it also mean when you have a whistleblowing process implemented, does it mean you also have more cases compared to the European part of the world?
Definitely. Just simply because the risk level for Europe and Middle East and Africa are completely different.
But this would mean that you have more cases. So people are speaking up more in the Middle East than in Europe. Is that what you are saying?
No, I think that level of issues in Middle East and Africa higher, just simply because of if we review Transparency International Index for those countries, majority of Middle East, probably except UAE, are on the lower side.
Absolutely.
So you do expect more issues coming from this region, just simply by default. Human rights issues, bribery and corruption, money laundering, those are one of the most common coming from this region.
That's also, from Transparency International perspective, yes. I'm just wondering, when you have a whistleblowing process implemented, I'm not sure. And I have seen different, cases. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether it's representative. But do you see, compared to Europe, that you have more people speaking up in the Middle East, or is it more same level? You know what I mean? It's more the cultural part, and because what I have experienced, for example, also when I work in the Middle East, so they are not really speaking up more. They are, of course, more emotional, but it takes much more that you also report it through, for example, a whistleblowing hotline.
Yes, probably if we're talking about the level employee wants to talk, it's not, for Middle East is not that different versus Europe. We do know the practices that, for example, historically, some nations are not comfortable to talk, for example, China, where we know it just simply created with their, how they were taught. Or ex-CIS countries, USSR territory. And in a country, US culture is very proactive and they are promoting whistleblowing. So in Middle East, I would say it's more in the middle. I would not see any of those extremes. And it's more of I would say, company-driven. If there is a proper corporate culture which encourage employees to talk and they see results of those investigations, then they start speaking more proactively.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So I also asked you before, so what is your own passion about compliance? Because I know, we work in the compliance environment. We all have passion for what we are doing. For some of our listeners, it's maybe not that clear that we can have passion for compliance. So I'm really curious, learning from you, what drives you in your environment?
Well, I started compliance 15 years ago and I still love it. And I think this is one of the few functions which allows us to see what's happening in organization, like have a helicopter view in different dimensions, any function, possibility to deep dive. It's not a lot of functions which allow such a diverse overview of the organization. And what I really love is that compliance helps to drive integrity in the organization and support fairness. For me, what really is my passion, I really enjoy that there is a fairness in place. That employees, if they are asking for something, that there is a fair judgment, and especially I enjoy when it's being supported from top management. So that when there is a tone at the top, and you know that you're coming to the executives who are really share the same values as you are, and they are really seeking for the fairness. This is really something that drives me.
And thank you very much. And what are the biggest challenges you see also, for compliance and responsibles right now in these days, maybe also over the last 2 years? Because what I see, it really changed also over the last 2.5 years since the pandemic. There are additional challenges also for compliance departments. So what do you see from your side right now?
I do see increase in HR-related cases. That people are, I got a feeling that people becoming more stressed. And we do see results of those certain anxiousness and difficulties each of us had during pandemic time. And at the moment, so I am able to see in the statistics, if we analyze statistics, that there are more interpersonal conflicts,
really?
which are not a short one, but those which are coming for the last couple of years, and they just growing, and explode at some point of time. So that is one of the trends I see quite clearly within last year and two.
So have you ever been in the situation that your own personal integrity was under pressure?
Yes. I
would you like to share it? You can always say no, I'm not going to answer that. But I know that also our listeners are very curious about that, because I think everybody of us was already under pressure when it came to our integrity. And it's always interesting to hear also how people managed it. Also for our maybe younger listeners to know they are not alone here.
Okay, so let me think about the example I can share.
Otherwise, if it's too personal, let me know, and then I just go on and will ask you, how would you recommend to react and to manage it to your younger self?
I would say choose carefully which company you want to work with. It relates to the two dimensions. First, management you're going to work with. Have an interview not only with your direct manager or legal counsel, but your business partner. And understand the values of this person, what drives him or her. Because unfortunately, the common mistake me and a few of my friends doing in their careers, in compliance careers, that they was purely choosing a functional path. They was have an interview with the manager, one-on-one, a chairman of compliance committee, but they haven't had a chance to talk with the business partners, because they might hear a completely different story. And then that leads to the certain difficulties in the career, including difficult business decisions and challenges which might come to the career because of the desynchronization or different values between yourself and your business partner.
That's a very good one, because that's exactly what happens. Normally you have this one-to-one. When you are applying for a function, you are really going to be interviewed and assessed also for that function. But especially for compliance, it's so important to understand with whom am I asking and dealing, working and dealing with in a day-to-day situation. And of course, that's business. And if you cannot trust your business partner, it's quite difficult for a compliance responsible as a second line of defense. Yeah.
True.
So first line of defense and second line of defense need to meet before they make the decision to work with each other. Absolutely. So thank you very much. I think it's also helpful for our colleagues listening to us right now and maybe not being as experienced as you are already. So what else do you think are the trends now also for the future when it comes to compliance and corporate integrity? I think there is a huge shift going on right now. So where would you like to see compliance maybe in 2 or 3 years?
First of all, there is a continuous trend of globalization. So as we see, a lot of legislation are being launched in a different part of the world, such as data protection, for example, and GDPR being replicated in other countries. We also see a anti-bribery, anti-corruption regulation coming all over the world. So, they are approximately very similar, with a minor local deviations. So, I think that we are coming to the world when there would be global compliance framework.
This would be nice if we have a global one and not all the different ones. That's exactly what we will need, isn't it?
Yeah, I do hope that we will come to this point one day, but definitely that's not the midterm solution.
No, yeah, actually,
So what I think that we are moving into, we are coming from the phase of basic compliance. So at the moment, we do see that there is a basic compliance organizations which has a basic compliance structures. Then there is some mature organizations, and I think that we are coming to the advanced compliance stage, where compliance would be perceived not as a control function, but as a competitive business advantage.
Great, thank you.
Exactly, yes. So compliance is a value proposition. I believe this is the future of the function, when we can really negotiate deals based on the compliance. For example, for the merchant acquisitions, you're buying the company who has no compliance culture, so you can already say on the pre-acquisition stage that you will have to assess compliance framework, because that would lead to the significant risk for you, or even get a significant discount because there is unpredictable risks in the business. Or on the contrary, if you buy a strong organization, a company with a stronger compliance framework, that is a definitely advantage. And you know that there is no hidden Pandora boxes you would open once you acquire the organization.
Sounds absolutely right for me, and that's also what I hope for. It's not only hoping, but that's also what we work for, because as you said at the beginning, it's a competitive advantage. What I see often, it's not yet recognized as that. It's still a burden. But for me, also what you said right now, if you are, for example, acquiring a company with a strong compliance framework, but not only on paper, but also implemented and lived, reducing the risks based on that, I would also be willing paying goodwill for that.
Exactly. So, and that's why this is an advanced stage, which we hopefully come to. And as we're talking today about specificity of Middle East, I think that Middle East at the moment has a very active trend and moving from the basic to mature in most of the organization. That's the trends I can see from the local compliance conferences. But still, we are not still on the level of European compliance. When you see a compliance week in Brussels versus Dubai, you do see that there is a still certain level of improvement which required in the region to go to the European level.
But when I witness what's going on in Dubai, the speed they have, I think it takes not that long for that region to be, to really also come to the more advanced and professional and advanced level. Because what I saw now also over the last 4 years, for example, they really came from nothing to basic, and now already that's what it's so nice to see, and they really want to change. They would like to become best in class and at least as good as the Western part, and that's what I really like, and highly appreciate that they put a lot of effort into that.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Within like 4 or 5 years, I see significant shift in their compliance mindset of Middle Eastern companies. And that's really amazing how serious they take the matter and how fast they are moving. Now, a lot of national companies understand that they need to have a compliance framework, and sometimes they don't even have obligations to follow European or US framework, but they deliberately decide to do so. And again, to just show the advantage, show competitive advantage that we do have all the required elements of the program in place.
I do not knowing that, for example, the code of conduct is just one part of compliance, and it's really very happy where we start with. But I also support companies. They have such a strong code of conduct. They really live it and they demonstrate it. And it's also part when they have any agreements with partners and partnerships they build up. It's all about the values. And sometimes I think they do much more than maybe. How should I say? It's not because they have to. They just do it because they know it's all value-based at the end. And it's, as you said, it's not the obligation. It's just how they would like also to be seen. And they put the boundaries with whom they would like to make business. It's not formalized always. That's what I see. They do much more than they have in their papers. It's not formalized, but it's maybe in a much more natural way they do it.
Absolutely. That's I would think that relates to the vision and ambitions of those countries, which wants to be a best place in the world. As for example, Dubai strategy, which even shows in this example that companies taking even when it's about the organization, they take it to the highest level. So they establish ESG frameworks. They talk not about the compliance, but they talk about the entire government structure. They set it right from the very beginning. When they start the project, they start hiring compliance, not in the middle of somewhere, but from the very beginning. There's a project stage. They establish a new company, they create a new project, and they hire compliance officer. I think this is really amazing.
They really invest.
I'm sure, yes, and I'm sure this region would be one of the leading, and it is already one of the leading in compliance. In compliance area shortly, just simply because of how strategically they approach in the topic.
So, Elena, it was a real pleasure, and I think we could go on for hours right now. And if you also allow me to invite you again, and also see maybe what's going on over the next 6 months, in Dubai, in your region, when it comes to compliance, it would be a real pleasure, also for our listeners. So, thank you very much for sharing with us. Yes, we could talk now much more, and I think we would not run out of any topics talking about compliance. So, I wish you all the best, and I'm looking forward having you in one of our next shows very, very soon. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you, Sonja. It was a pleasure.
This was another episode of the Human Factor Corporate Integrity Matters, today with Elena Kovaleva. Following the motto, corporate integrity secures and empowers individuals and organizations. Thank you for listening. My name is Sonja Stirnimann and I'm your host. Stay curious, actionable, and a role model. Take care and goodbye. Would you like to learn more, meet peers, and getting qualified? So visit the website Corporate Integrity Concepts or Corporate Integrity Academy. Or do you think this podcast could be interesting for someone you know? Sharing is caring, and we are always happy to welcome your peers to our community. And if you like this episode, subscribe and don't miss any of the future ones. The show notes are, of course, enriched with relevant information, and your connection via any of the social media channels is highly appreciated and will be answered. Promised. And please do not forget, topics of your interest or interview partners are highly welcome. Just send me a note on any of the channels you know.